Hello, everybody. My name is Christian. Today I am doing my presentation on the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. This presentation is serving as part of my world literature second project. So, anyway, let's get right into it. I've laid out how this presentation PowerPoint will work. So, right now I'm doing the introduction, just kind of laying everything out. Then we're going to take a look at who exactly was Franz Kafka. Then we'll do a plot summary of the Metamorphosis, and then finally we will do a themes and impact of the Metamorphosis, and then I'll just go over my sources. So anyway, we're going to take a look at who exactly was Franz Kafka. So Franz Kafka was born on the 3rd of July, 1883, and died on the 3rd of June, 1924, of tuberculosis. Kafka was born in Austria and lived there until 1918. After 1918, he lived in Czechoslovakia until his death in 1924. During his upbringing, he had an extremely strained relationship with his father, Hermann Kafka. This is very apparent in a lot of his writings. Anytime there is a father figure adjacent person, they are usually typically very brutish and very mean. However, we did know that he had a strained relationship with his father because we actually have this really long letter that Franz Kafka did write to his letter. It's called Letter to My Father, and it's a very scathing letter and criticism that Franz Kafka wrote about and to his father. Um, but anyway, Kafka worked as an insurance clerk for a majority of his adult life. This instilled a very disillusionment for bureaucratic life. Any sort of corporate lifestyle was kind of alienating to Kafka. He lived a very lonely life. He mostly worked and then he would write late into the evening. Kafka notably found a friend in a Max Brod. Kafka's work remained unpublished throughout his life, but upon Kafka's death, he left a note to Max to burn his life's work. However, Broad decided to publish it instead. And so it's important to note whenever we read anything of Kafka, it's not necessarily private, but he didn't want to have it published. He wanted it to have it burned instead, which this is very common for writers. If the same sort of thing applied to Nikolai Gogol with some of his work. But anyway, let's take a look at the Metamorphosis. Specifically, we're going to do a very brief plot summary. So part one is much more meatier than part two. In part one of the Metamorphosis, our main character Gregor Samsa awakens to find that he has become a monstrous vermin. The first sentence in Kafka's Metamorphosis, it's when it gets translated from German, they don't say he's a bug or an insect. They say, monstrous vermin, and it's never really clear. But a lot of people assume that it's an insect or a bug. Um, However, Gregor is not scared about becoming an insect. Rather, he is scared about how he will be viewed with his life as a bug. Um, Even more so, he's scared that he will not be able to provide for his family, as he is the sole breadwinner of his family. Now, in the introduction, he does state that he just doesn't want to be late for work. He is viewing this transformation of becoming a bug as more as an inconvenience to his job than like a genuine like emergency, which is sort of where like the Kafkaesque humor comes into play with this novella. Um, Let's see here. Gregor's boss arrives due to Gregor's unexcused absence. Gregor tries to explain, however, all his family and boss hear is essentially bug noises. Gregor is eventually able to crawl and open the door. However, once he opens the door, his family forces him back because they think this thing has ate Gregor and is not a transformation. And his father actually shoves something between his shoulder blades, and he gets injured in this process. Now as for part two is a lot more light in its contents, but it's a lot more heartbreaking and devastating. The second part of the Metamorphosis takes a look at the downfall of the Samsa family. Um, Gregor's sister is the only one to bring Gregor any food. Eventually, the rest of the family has to get jobs in Gregor's absence. Eventually, Gregor does succumb to his injury and passes away. When his family finds him, they dispose of his body and feel relieved that their burden has been released. Now, that's essentially where the story leaves off. To Now we are going to look at the themes and the impacts. Um, Now, as for the themes of the Metamorphosis, the main themes of the Metamorphosis revolve around alienation and isolation, a theme that filled Kafka's own life. Gregor Samsa essentially exists for the sole purpose of making money rather than actually live. However, Gregor is still an individual with his own thoughts and ideas and beliefs. However, this individuality alienates him from the rest of his family and coworkers as he just exists. And that's probably something that Kafka had felt in his life as an insurance clerk. Essentially, he's going in and day out, and he's writing in the evening, and his sole purpose, essentially, to the external world is to work, but in his internal life, it is to write, but he's not able to express that eternally, and that's essentially what he's getting at with the Metamorphosis. Um, as for the impact of the Metamorphosis, the work of Kafka and the Metamorphosis have been immense on the world. Some view Kafka's work as prophetic and ahead of its time, especially with works such as The Hunger Artist and The Trial. So in this regard, some people, when they read The Hunger Artist, which is about an artist whose only goal is to starve himself, they view that as essentially prophetic to Kafka's own death, because it's about an artist who starves himself. Kafka, whenever he developed tuberculosis, he wouldn't eat. Gregor Samsa, when he got injured, he eventually starved himself to death. So some people see it in that way. When they look at works like The Castle and The Trial, they compare it to things like Germany's reign during the occupation of Nazi Germany. People view it in a very Dostoevsky-like way when it comes to the rise of communism. There's a lot of ways that people see it as prophetic. Um, some view the Metamorphosis as a critique on the work as religious culture. Um, okay. Uh, the Metamorphosis some view it as a critique on this idea that one can use work as religious replacement, that has been prominent since the 19th century. So that's just meaning like the idea that with Nietzsche's like God is dead idea and we have killed him, we can fill that void with like work or something adjacent to that. And so Kafka's essentially critiquing that idea. Um, the Metamorphosis has been impactful to philosophies such as existentialism, with philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre citing Kafka as an influence. This is definitely existentialism is based on ideas like existence proceeds essence. Um, yeah. So you start off with existence and then you develop essence ever, but more so it's developed within a focus on the individual, like Kafka's works mostly are. Kafka has an impact on film, with David Cronenberg's film The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum being seen as a spiritual adaptation of the Metamorphosis. Now, actually, my copy of the Metamorphosis had a very beautiful introduction, little authors know, not authors know, but a little note by David Cronenberg, kind of introducing the Metamorphosis. But with that being said, that is my presentations. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, just feel free to send me a message. But that is my presentation on the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Thank you.